evening, everyone, and welcome to Faith Ministries Church Say Something, Do Something initiative. I'm Ashley.
And I am Salon, and we want to definitely wish you a happy Juneteenth.
Yes.
We hope that you all are celebrating and enjoying just a day. We know that some companies are starting to treat this as an actual holiday. Yeah. Can you believe that?
That's something else.
My goodness.
What was it, Target? Chase?
Target. I heard Microsoft is doing some things. I heard Nike, and I'm sure some other places as well.
Yeah.
So it's great to see that this day is being acknowledged and celebrated.
That's awesome.
A little more than it has in the past. So that's a good thing.
It's been a long time coming.
Yes, it has. And we believe a change is going to come. And we're doing our part to make that change. We know yesterday we began with addressing 4 areas of concentration in our effort to combat racism. We dealt with education. We dealt with the corporate workplace environment. We talked about, what else did we talk about?
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
It was family and friends as well.
Family and friends, yes. And some more. Yes, it's all a blur. What day is it?
I'm just confused. I don't know. But we are so glad that many of you all were able to join us on last night. And we just thank the participants who were part of the committees and the representatives that were able to come online. We just really thank you all for the time that you were able to give. And we're excited for tonight, where we have the youth, political arena, and also
criminal justice. Yes, and we know that these 3 areas are, just like the others, very crucial in our fight against racism and inequality. So we're looking forward to hearing from those representatives, and also looking forward to hearing from our pastor and first lady, Dr. C. Dexter and Dr. Shirley Wise. Let's see if we can bring them in right now.
All right.
And as we're doing that, we want to remind you that now is a great time to share. We know that we want to spread the news with as many people as possible. We want a lot of people to get these action steps so that we can put some of these things into action.
Yes.
Welcome, Doctor and Doctor.
Good evening, guys. How are you?
Hey. There you go.
We're good.
Glad to see you. Happy Juneteenth to you.
Yes.
I don't remember the last time I said that to you, but praise the Lord.
Right.
We had a great time on last night. And again, the beautiful thing about this is all being recorded so we can go back and review it and have a chance to write down some of the things we forgot. Tonight, we've got some great groups coming. And again, I encourage people to share now with people who they think should be on the line. This is not going to be the end of it. It's going to be a continuation. And we hope that we'll be able to continue this project and this process, whether we're in our building or not, because we still have the same problems and the same issues. So welcome to those of you who are here. And we invite you to participate in various ways to have your input now and in the future. What do you think?
Amen.
To the point.
Hey.
Well, let's get down to it. And the other group from yesterday was the church community.
Of course.
It's ironic that we forgot about that one. Because we are a church.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay, but that's all right. That is all right. But it was very exciting. We want to welcome everyone who's watching currently online. I see Lavon and Andrea. Bert is watching. Phil.
Yes, Gloria.
I see Natasha from Houston. She's watching. Margaret from Tennessee.
Carol, glad that you're feeling well.
Yes, good. Good to see you. Yes, and hi, Bob and Tori.
Yes, and so many others.
So many others. Yes. So we thank you all for joining us and for watching, and make sure you're sharing because it's time to get started.
It is. And we're going to begin with the youth task force group. And we have a couple members from that group on with us. And we want to see if we can start with Scott Porter. He was one of the leads in this group. And if you don't mind, Scott, as we bring you up, just a quick introduction of yourself and why you why you decided to be a part of this youth task force group.
For me, just really proud to be part of this particular committee because I love working with the youth, serving, I guess, almost 10 years working with the middle and high school students. And
wow.
It's been really awesome. I love working with them. Make me feel young again, even though I'm old. And so it's just something I just really passionate about, and just really, especially with the Youth at Faith Ministries. They are so awesome, and every time I engage with them over the years, I always get something from them. So, and even just recently, I'll probably share a little bit later. One of the young ladies sent me a text about her doing a speech at Columbus Academy. So I'm kind of share that a little bit later, but it's just really a blessing to work with them, and and just be able to help engage them as far as help them and help guide and also coordinate some of the things, actions that we talked about last Saturday.
Awesome.
That is fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. We also have another representative, Mr. Derek Anderson.
Hi, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good.
Actually, it's interesting because listening to Scott, I'm definitely going to echo some of what he said. I love the youth. I love the kids. I don't work with them formally at the church, but I have had relationships. We've developed comic books together.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about what's happening today in society, how they're feeling, how things are impacting them, and maybe not even society, just about their normal day. But one thing that really drew me to this time is as the protests were taking place, I just started to notice the people that were out there doing it, who they were. And to be honest with you, if you look out there at the people that were protesting, you'll see that there are a lot of our Gen Zs and just people that are not me anymore, not Generation X. The traditionalists were not out there. Well, they were there, but not in mass like the others were. And I decided to stop and talk to them, while they were protesting, and just had some really good conversations. And they helped me to understand that they know what's going on.
Yeah.
They definitely want to make an impact. One thing that I want to make sure that I point out is the fact that the new generation, the Gen Zs, the Gen Ys, these are the most educated people on earth right now. They've gone to the lengths of getting an education to understand what's happening in the world. They have the Black history courses and classes, so on and so forth. So they know a lot about what's going on, and that's totally different than my generation or the generation prior to the Boomer tradition. So I'm interested, and I want to be a part of it. I'm ready to pass the baton and watch them run on. But I'd definitely like to give my input if they're interested in hearing.
Yes, I'm sure that is valuable input. And speaking of passing the baton, one of the representatives from the group who I believe helped lead the group along with Scott is Maya Chafin, and she is working today, but she was able to send a video to kind of get our conversation started. So let's see if we can hear from Maya.
All right.
Hi everyone, my name is Maya. I'm going to be a junior in high school, and the reason why I chose the Youth Task Force group is because as a young Black woman in society, especially in a predominantly white community, I've definitely experienced racism and ignorant comments from my peers. So the reason why I wanted to join this group is to spread awareness to my peers and to people who are my age, so they know what to do, since we're the next generation, I guess. So the first action step that we have is a youth-led worship session. And basically it would either be virtual or in person with social distancing and masks, but it would be led by middle and high school students, and would also include a discussion on the Black Lives Matter movement. So with that, the event would include drive-through prayer. So basically the people would come up in the cars, and it would be targeted for youth, but it could be for everyone. And they would come up with their cars, and then through the window someone could pray for them from the church or from someone in the community. And then songs and performances by local youth talent, so not only a faith ministries thing, but everyone in Central Ohio and all the youth so they can get to know God for themselves. And the purpose of this event is to show that the Black Lives Matter movement is not flesh and blood. It's not a black and white issue, but it's a good versus evil issue. And for our Christian youth to use praise and worship as a weapon to confront racism and injustice. Another action step that we had was having an education and history session on African American history. A lot of students, I know, even me, I live in Western Ohio. I've lived here my entire life, and I really haven't gotten to experience learning things in school other than the civil rights movement and slavery when it comes to African American history. And I know that me, along with many other youth, need to learn about the other contributions that African Americans have done for this country, so that doesn't create ignorance. And black and white need to learn about this issue, these things. And so another thing is that they also may not learn these things at home. Their parents may not be able to teach them and educate them on these topics, or maybe they just don't know as well. So it would be an African American history lesson by historians and African American history professors to discuss Black history and how it relates to today's event. The purpose of this is to give our youth the ability to navigate today's challenges with the knowledge and understanding of African American history, and to develop new strategies to confront racial justice.
Thank you, Maya, for that detailed description of a couple of those action steps. And it's good to see that the youth are not all allowing the adults to speak for them. It's great to have adults to speak on their behalf and to advocate for them, but it's great to see that some are speaking for themselves.
There you go,
as
willing
well.
to take the lead. That's
yes,
great.
exactly.
That's great.
Yes. So Scott, I believe that there's more that Maya left on the table to discuss. Are there any other steps that you'd like to bring to light for us?
Sure, absolutely. We have actually two more items, but just real quick, I want to say when we were kind of brainstorming on this on Saturday, and just talking about some things, and I want to just give kudos to Maya because, when I asked her, so well, Maya, what are your thoughts? And then she was like, well, we kind of like have this idea. I'm not sure I want to talk about it. I'm like, well, just mix it. And then she came up with that action about the youth-led worship session.
Yeah.
And breaking it down that one. I'm like, who's gonna hold that back? I'm like, that was an excellent idea. I'm like, let's put that down. So so I just really want to say kudos to her for just really just having the just say the vote and say, okay, yeah, I'm just come with that idea. And it was really excellent. So two other ideas we had was a youth to officer virtual town hall, where we would just kind of combine some young people, also reach out some local police officers, and for like really in-depth, honest conversations surrounding challenges and issues that face our youth and police. And some of the topics or issues we would talk about is the youth relationship to police, touch on Black Lives Matter as it relates to police brutality, what to do when confronted by police. And also, if possible, one thing that came out is this: maybe if by chance there are some young people who may be interested in getting involved with public safety and want to be a police officer, maybe they can, connect with a police officer and maybe just, connect with them, and maybe an officer can serve as a mentor or kind of share with them some things that they can do. The purpose of all this is sort of like kind of bridge that gap in terms of relationship between our youth and the police. But I think most of the interaction between our young people and police is, I'll say, close to over 60% of it. It's not positive. So usually, whether it be going to a football game, sporting event, or even at Easton, walking around, sometimes when things happen, a lot of times it makes it fun with the police. It's not a positive outcome. Right. So maybe it's just more of getting a little understanding of between youth and police officers together and if you really talk some things out and really let's please have opportunity to listen to the youth, hear how they feel. And so maybe it can kind of bridge that gap. Also, one of the things, the last thing we came up with, and sort of like it relates to youth-led worship service, worship session, is really like some type of youth artistic expression to confront racism and injustice. And that is another virtual event where we convene a diverse group of young people, whether it be spoken word, art, voice, thought, people who might be thought leaders, stuff like that, to express their feelings and thoughts relating to racism, injustice, and police brutality. And also within that, also have some songs, some music as well. And I'll just have an open dialogue, but that also be youth-led as well. And again, it sort of ties in with the youth-led worship session, and the purpose of this event would be kind of to provide an opportunity for our youth to kind of express themselves artistically, and so there are also other alternatives to make their voices heard through art, creativity, things of that nature. So those are the 4 things total that we came up with, and like to probably try to narrow it down to maybe 1 or 2 of those that we think are really going to be doable things. I think definitely, probably 2. I would definitely say most definitely 2 youth-led worship sessions. Something that I think would be really something that we can do right off the bat.
That is
That is fantastic in the Black history lessons, because I think that's something that we kind of all need, and that would be a great idea. I'm sure we have people in our church, if not in our church, people that we can recruit to do that on a regular basis, make that a regular thing, not just something we do as a special event.
And I am so impressed, Scott, with what the youth are doing, even during this pandemic and all the protests and everything that are taking place. And I was excited to see many of our young people and older young people actually getting involved in protests and everything. With their mask and everything. That was just awesome. And just to see how brilliant these young people are at Faith Ministries. We've had a chance to sit in on some of the virtual meetings that they've had, and they didn't know we were there. And it's like, oh my goodness, they blew our minds with their knowledge and their expertise in subjects. And, it's just awesome. So I'm thankful for the leadership of our youth. The things that you said were really very good. And I was glad that Maya could, even though she's at work, and she could get some of her ideas. But the ideas of all the young people are just awesome. So thank you.
Yeah. Real quick, I'm sorry. It's really, and I'm kind of trying to piggyback what Derek said, is that it's really become a young people's movement. Yes. And it's really interesting that, a lot of the young people, it's also, I see a lot of people within our church who are doing awesome things, like Maya. It's just real quick, kind of shocked me a couple Saturdays ago. My youngest son, Zion, was like, Dad, I want to go to downtown Reynoldsburg and protest. Kind of took me by surprise. And, and the reason why I said Zion is very laid back and quiet, but somehow this motivated him to go out there and hold a Black Lives Matter sign. And then also, just real quick, there's a young lady at our church, Olivia Pierre Louise. Pierre Louis. She sent me a text on Wednesday, and she talked about how she was one of the speakers at Columbus Academy who talked about standing against racism. Right. She sent me her speech. She was amazing. She was amazing. So I asked her if I could post that speech on my Facebook. And so other posts could hear. She's like, absolutely. But I think at one point we were going to be working for, voting for, or like giving her kudos for discovering a cure for something. Because that child is something else. So it is great. And I see all that we have these type of young folks
Right.
in our church, and along having a pastor who encourages that, who supports that, and pushes that. So to me, it's not surprising that we have these type of young people who are sort of like being at the forefront and being leaders locally in movement. So I know myself, Derek, the rest of the committee, we're definitely honored and proud to be part of this and working with them, and hopefully be able to engage with them to kind of help them, express themselves and even come up with some strategies and thoughts on how they can confront, racism and injustice.
Right.
Oh, wow. I just really appreciate the work you guys have done. This is just fantastic. And I can even see one of the things you mentioned of the youth getting the opportunity to mentor, or it's not be mentored, and to have the opportunity to have an open conversation with some of the police officers.
Yeah.
We have police officers right there in the church, and this is something that other churches could do, and utilize the officers that are right there, or perhaps in the neighborhood of the church, and have that conversation. And that's something that could happen now.
It is
via Zoom.
right. And we have a police station that's walking distance within our church specifically, and I'm sure other churches around are in similar situations. I love that idea. And Derek, I also really like the idea of allowing a space and providing a space for the youth to exhibit their gifts and to do it and to direct their energy and their, in some cases, outrage or frustration towards something that is artistic and uplifting. And I really believe that could be a positive outlet.
There you go.
Yeah, I agree with that, Salon. I think a lot of times, and even children know this, they have a voice, they want to use it.
Right.
And I think, what Scott's doing, what Maya's doing is we're offering that platform so that they can actually stand up and be heard.
Right.
A lot of times, children feel as though, parents don't listen, adults don't listen. But one thing that I've been noticing, just watching how some of these children are responding, some of these young adults, I should say, are responding to their parents. They're standing up, they're speaking out, and they're telling their parents what they know about this and how they feel about it. And that's what, some as parents, sometimes we want our children to just, hey, be quiet. We just need you to chill out for a second and let us handle this. But I think we probably need to reconsider, because they have an opinion, they have a voice, and like I said, these kids are brilliant. And we need to listen to them.
Yeah. And really, I guess the youth are the least to blame for the current state of the world, but they have the most to gain. So it's impressive to see how they are standing up. So thank you all so much. I don't know if you have any final thoughts, Scott, that you'd like to add. I know you've already said a lot, but
right. Don't you say anymore.
Well, we thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right. So that was our youth solutions task force. And now we are going to move to our criminal justice task force. And the person who was chairing that is Mr. Dana. So let's see if we can bring him in here.
Hi, Dana. How's it going?
Going fine. How you doing?
Good.
Doing well.
Good.
Yes.
I'd like to take the opportunity to say thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this. Doc called me and took me off in another committee and asked me to be a part of this criminal justice. And it was an experience. And I listened to Sister Bly's last night talking about the lunch counters and some of the things at the age of 70. I'm not that far behind her, but the thing is, we experienced so many things like many of us.
Right.
And so there's so much racism and injustice in our society. We just need to be aware of it.
Right.
And we need to handle it.
Dana, can you move to your left a little bit?
Not get too excited about things when they do happen, because we can certainly lose sight of what we're trying to accomplish for ourselves and our families and so forth. So,
definitely.
Exactly.
If we could interrupt you for one moment, can you just move to your left just a little bit so we can keep you centered?
We want to see all of you.
Yeah, we see you. I don't know if that was your good side or your. Oh, they're about the same.
There you go.
It's all good. Yes.
Really?
That's right. Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted, but you were just explaining just the importance of this area that of your focus. Yes, and also we know that Mark is also with us. Let's see if we can bring in Mark. And thank you for being a part of this conversation here. Why was it important for you to be a part of this criminal justice area of concentration?
Well, as you look out with all the protests that's going on with the Black Lives Matter and police brutality and the racism, the protests are definitely necessary and we need it. And at some point we have to move beyond the protests and we have to do some things that affect some policy changes. So that's why I got involved with the criminal justice to try to affect some changes in those areas.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, let's see if we can hear some of those suggestions that you all have. Dana, you gonna walk us through some of your?
Start off.
Oh, Mark. Okay. All right. Let's get it.
Okay. We discussed several areas when dealing with the police. So start off in the area of hiring. We want to increase recruiting and hiring of minority officers. We know there's currently an active program, but it can be improved upon. Secondly, we want to affect the area to promote a positive culture. During investigation and hiring of officers, it should be noted that all negative activities must be acceptable to reflect the positive culture he or she is entering. Number 3, we want a minority mentoring and path to success. We want to identify leadership qualities in minority police officers and assign minority mentoring groups and career path to success. And then in the area of training, we want to revise formal training. We want to revise formal and field training for recruits from 9 to 12 months to a longer period. Many countries train officers for 2 to 5 years already, based upon education and prior work experience. 5, in the area of de-escalation training, officers should be trained periodically on de-escalation techniques, on low-level stops, for example, traffic stops and domestic violence. And 6, compliance standards and testing. During active duty, the officer must be tested for compliance standards to continue employment, not just gun qualifications, but compliance, just as other professionals like accountants, insurance agents, and lawyers. Dana will take over.
In addition to the accountability, we recommend that they amend the written reprimand rules, amend the length of time officers are written in excess of use of force, and they can stay in the file from anywhere from 3 years to 5 years, or to the end of their careers, to make sure that they are a part of the evaluation process. Our number 8 recommendation is to ban military equipment. Mayor's office, city council, police unions must revise the rule they refer to as the 1033 for military equipment, such as tanks, armors, weapons that are used primarily during protests. We found out the funding can be directed, a lot of the funding can be directed to community programs to reduce the tension and improve relationships. We want to also reform the use of force. We know a lot of the states now have got on board banning use of tear gas, rubber and wooden bullets on people. And they really are a higher risk of injury and death. And that has already happened. And I heard a couple lawmakers say that it's not gas is not lethal, and it is. It's classified that way. So some of these programs for our lawmakers, churches can be part of the community outreach program to help with other churches to actually develop relationships. I think I made a comment last night that in our my church, my youth group, our youth church, we would socialize and have fellowship with white churches, all types of churches, and we did this every other Sunday. And we had song fests and that type of things. And this was really to help with the relationships of those individuals that stay in one place. Their churches, they don't leave at one church to go to another church. We just wanted to intermingle and find out that we don't bite, we don't have tails. Community oversight. I understand one has been put to Columbus already, but we recommend an active community oversight board, which include community leaders, citizens of different races and political influences that reviews and police the city council and conduct and activities. All recommendations presented to the mayor's office. But the nice thing, the thing that this is going to have it's going to have teeth. You just can't be a board and sit on the board and give suggestions. This thing is, if a recommendation goes up to the mayor's office on a police conduct, recommendation for firing or what have you, it has to have enough of a sincerity that it's going to be followed through. Otherwise, you might as well just ban the board and go on home. One area that we started to talk about is revamping the court system. Now, this may sound crazy, but revamping the juvenile court system, we need to catch our youth. And I think Scott and we had already kind of like started touching on that earlier, but we've got to catch our youth in their most productive time and work with them and work with the court system. We just seen where the judges were being convicted 28 years for taking money on selling youth to the juvenile system and to the court system. That can't happen because a lot of times it's us and not them. And we're the ones that's being sold. And that takes us back to the racism and the injustice in our system. And we ask that the solution can also be to save a child through the community church assistance for the at-risk kids. Teach them life skills. We know there's a program in Florida. It's ran by sororities and fraternities down there that has to do with saving a kid. They mentor. They do things with the courts to help them get through the tough parts. They work with the parents. They work with the community. They work with the church. But to save a child from what's to happen after the age of 18, we need to catch it early. And same thing with the adult system as well. So those are some of the things that we spoke of. And any questions or anything like that, we'd be more than glad to handle it.
Well,
you guys are,
I guess, more
committed. Only two of you with a lot.
Yeah, that's great.
And I think what we might need to do, Dana, is we might need to connect you with the committee that's following, because we're going to need the political action to be able to enact the things that you have already mentioned. But it's a great list. It's a great starting place. What about more about the incarceration? You touched on a little bit about the court system, but what can we do about so many of our people going and staying in prison?
Well, I mean, this program has just blossomed to the point where it exposed the type of individuals we have in our own church. And, we have sororities, we have fraternities that are already doing a lot of this work also. Some brainstorming, sitting down and just saying, okay, who we have, what can we do, and see who's ready to commit and work with the courts. But there is a program, I can actually get it to the church. It's been sent to me, and it has to do with how to save a child. And it works all the way into the adult prison system as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I have a question, Dana. I saw recently, I think it was maybe perhaps today, where the Colorado governor signed into law there's police reform already happening there. For just us regular folks, do you know where we are for the state of Ohio by chance in regards to reform? And if we haven't made any reform yet, can you walk us through that process? How are we going to take these ideas? What is the next step?
I don't know what the state has done from the governor's office has, but I know the mayor's office that they're making some adjustments now in the training aspect, the policy making decision. They just appointed a 14-member board, oversight board. So they're starting to make some changes like right away. And I think that how we can tag team, and we probably need to connect maybe with the mayor's office. What can we do as a church? How can we represent ourselves, other churches in the process? Because like I said, on the advisory board, I saw some of the members, and a lot of the members are good members, but some of them are not just regular folks. And I think sometimes we just got to have regular folks that are part of this, because, if you get too political and you get somebody who's running for an office or will be running for an office and stuff like that, their heart may not be in it.
Right.
And I just think that there's a lot of work to do. The low-level stops, the police officer has to have some de-escalation.
Right.
They know who we are before they come to the car, and they're getting hyped up.
Right.
So we just got to figure out how to lower the tension. And I had in my presentation, there was 3 questions I wanted to ask everyone who's listening. And it's really a program that I went through almost 40 years ago, and it's still with me today. And we talked about it a little bit last night in the workplace. But the 3 questions you need to ask yourself: what do you believe about blacks? What do you believe about blacks? The second question is, what do you believe whites believe about blacks?
Nice.
And the last one is, what do you believe that blacks believe about blacks? And the reason why those questions are important is because if you can answer those questions, and I'm sure that if there was 5 of us, we sitting in a room, we only answered it one time, this can go around for so many answers, the things that has happened to you. And the reason for that is the stress levels that it puts up on you when you are talking to your supervisor or manager during an interview, a job interview, or a performance interview. Because they're going to get you on 3 things. They're going to get you on skills, they're going to get you on communication, and they're going to get you on education. 2 of those 3 things, you may not get that 6% and get a 3% raise, because they're going to look at you differently. And if you can sort through the conversation, and know where you feel, how you feel, and you've taken care of yourself, I think you're going to be at ease whatever the decision is going to be. So this is a stress release, and from my standpoint. And I know that a lot of people that I've talked to experience the same things. So I don't know if that helps or it doesn't help, but appreciate your time.
Oh, that's good.
Well, your comments certainly do help, and your suggestions. I heard a couple stats that mention, I believe, the United States has about 5% of the worldwide population. However, we incarcerate about 25% of the world prisoner population, which means that 1 out of every 4 person who is behind bars in the world is behind bars thanks to, well, I won't say thanks to, is behind bars in America. And beyond that, we know that there is a racial component to that, because 1 out of 3 young Black boys today statistically are expected to be in jail at some point in time. I know I have 2 sons.
It's scary.
And I don't know who that other one is, but it's not going to be the 2 in this house.
3, right?
But I mean, right. But that, I mean, that's just daunting. And even for our, Hispanic and Latino brothers, I believe it's 1 in 6 of the young Latino men, young boys are statistically going to be in prison. So we can't, it's important to look at the regulation and to try and regulate some of that racism, but definitely going to the heart of it is something that we need to do as well, because it's clearly a racial component to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have one more thought.
Yeah.
Dana and Mark, what do you guys think? To be honest, I don't know. What is Columbus's stance on having the police officers, their area is where they live and work? I really like the idea of that, so that the community knows who they are and they know the community even better. Where is Columbus, or just in its surrounding areas in regards to that?
You want to go, Mark?
Because I'm not sure where Columbus is. Do you have any idea?
The only thing I know is that as long
somebody
as you live,
let's look. Come on, speak up, y'all.
That's the audience, but that is a valid point, to police your own neighborhood. So you're not going into enemy territory, so to speak.
Right. And you know the people there.
Right.
So, and that makes a difference.
If I understood, someone could correct me, but I understood it was Franklin County. For Columbus with Franklin County, the surrounding areas, they had to live in those areas. I have heard of some individuals, like State Highway Patrol, they live in maybe a different county. But Franklin County, or the county in which you live in for community policing, but that's got relaxed. And, and I think we've got so far away from community policing where individuals knew their police officers and knew if they rolled up on a situation, they would handle it a lot differently.
Yeah, because I think that really ties into when the youth know who the officers are in the area. It's a rapport that you have, and you can interact with them in a totally different manner. So, and it works on both sides. This is some great stuff, guys.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. And I see that on that last point of the conversation, Tracy was unmuting her mic. I think she was trying to get into that, but we are bringing her in now, as we move to the political arena. And we have a couple representatives from this group as well, which I know had very lively and productive discussions. So Tracy, would you mind introducing yourself and letting us know how you landed in this political group?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tracy Johnson, and I said it in our focus group that we had, but I really do not like politics. And people will think I like politics, but I really don't. But I understand politics, and I understand the importance of engaging in politics. So I stay actively involved in the political arena because I know the impact that the political arena has on every aspect of my life and your life. And so this work is important to me because it impacts everything that I do. And so I wanted to lend my voice, my expertise. I do have relationships with politicians, elected officials. I have an understanding of how unions work, which impact a lot of what we're talking about. I also have an understanding of community-based organizations. And so that is why it was important for me to be a part of the Political Action Task Force.
Well, we're very glad that you are.
Yes, exactly. And I love that she comes from the education side of things too. So she was very, very helpful in both of those areas.
Yes. And also we have Mr. Merv. Would you mind introducing yourself and kind of giving us a quick rundown of why you think this subject is important?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I echo a lot of what Tracy said in terms of the far-reaching impact of the political realm. But my reason for being on this, serving on this committee, really is to help us develop programming and recommendations that are going to drive efforts that will allow all of these conversations about all these folks that are now supporting Black Lives Matter, and they're going on record with their support, to drive some level of accountability to help maximize and sustain the effort, so that it's not one of these situations where folks are all fired up now and maybe for the next month or so, but then it dies down when the next shiny toy reveals itself.
Yeah.
We've had these efforts throughout the last 400 years at different points. And what I'd like for us to do is, and I think this church is well positioned to do it, is to drive some level of accountability with our local officials, with some of our local companies who have gone on record with their support of Black Lives Matter and Black people are important. I'm going to give y'all the afternoon off on June. So, okay, let's make sure that a lot of these things that have been discussed are sustainable beyond the extent of the current news cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. Let's see if we can get into some of those action points. Tracy, are you going to walk us through those?
Yes, I'm going to walk you through a kind of overview in our 5 areas of focus.
Okay.
And then I'm going to let Merv take over and talk about our immediate actions and our timeline.
Wonderful.
Okay. All right. So it's interesting because I was on the call yesterday also, and as we were, as I was listening to the conversation that was taking place, it kind of reminded me of the conversation that were taking place in the subcommittee, and that the political arena is far-reaching. It impacts the church, education, the workplace, family and friends, youth, and criminal justice. So the political arena determines policies, laws, and funding that impacts all of those areas.
Right.
So the political aspect of this is far-reaching, and a lot of the conversations that were taking place yesterday were talking about, engaging in voting and voter registration and attending meetings and all these things. And I was like, oh, these are things that we were talking about in our subgroup. So in our subgroup, we kind of, because it's so far-reaching, it's monumental, and we kind of focused in 5 areas. So our 5 areas of focus in our actionable items are as follows. And so the first thing we talked about was voting, of course. And I think every group has talked about the importance of voting. And so one of the things that we talked about is making sure that we are actively involved in registering people to vote. Making sure that we provide the links to the county board of elections, having voter registration drives. That's going to be part of this work because it's important that people register to vote.
Right.
We also talked about the importance of making sure that people request absentee ballots right after Labor Day. Because there were going to be some people who are not going to go to the polls, whether it's their physical challenges or because of COVID-19. People may say, I am not physically going to the polls. So it's going to be imperative that we start to educate people around the importance of requesting absentee ballots, and that needs to start taking place, right after Labor Day.
Right.
We also talked about organizing rides to the polls for those who actually want to physically go and vote on Election Day. That we need to have it so that there are no barriers for people being able to vote. If it rains a little bit, people, I'm not going. I'm not. So we need to take those barriers away and get our people to the polls. So voting is definitely up there as far as an actionable item. But we also talked about our second area of focus was the education around the political arena, around voting, around elections. And we talked about creating a educational videos or social media campaign, vote by faith. And some of the things that we talked about that would be part of this video series social media campaign would be, for one, how to request and complete an absentee ballot. How do you find your polling location? These are things that some of us assume that everybody understands,
Right.
but they don't. A lot of times, absentee ballots are thrown out because you didn't check the right box, you didn't sign the right line, you didn't put the date. This will invalidate your absentee ballot, and people don't understand that. Even simple things about how much postage you need to put on the absentee ballot. It's not the traditional regular stamp. People don't understand that, and so the ballots get sent back and mailed back to them and delays the process. So developing a video about how to request it and how to complete it. Another would be, what do you need when you go to the polls? There's a lot of misinformation out there about what type of identification that you need. There are people walking into these polling stations with 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces of information that they don't necessarily need, or it's not the correct information that they need. So making sure people understand what they need when they go to the polls. The other thing we talked about that people need to be educated on is why voting down the entire ballot is important. People pay attention to the president, the mayor, the governor. They will vote for those or city council or school board members, and then they stop. They don't understand the function or the role of the various offices on the ballot, so they don't cast the ballot. They don't pay attention to the campaigning around those offices. And we need to educate them why that's important. Prime example, and we talked about this in our group, was when Commissioner Boyd talked about Franklin County utilizing $500 million to build a prison. I mean, I almost went through the roof. I couldn't type that on that check. Because Dr. Wise had questioned, well, what about affordable housing? We had talked about, well, what about after school programming? What about job training?
Right.
What are we doing to keep people out of the prison system versus creating something for when they get there? And that's $250 million. People need to understand what the county commissioner does. Those are tax dollars that are being used. And so educating people, creating the video that we talked about. This is what the county engineer does. This is what the city attorney does. Some people don't understand that you are electing your city attorney. That impacts the criminal justice system.
Right.
Voting timelines and the process. Knowing when early voting starts, knowing when you can request a ballot, knowing when the times that early voting is available. All of those things are going to be imperative that people need to understand what they are. We also talked about in the education form with that host and partner candidate forums. We need to get people in front of, whether it's virtually, because we don't know where we're going to be at, whether it's virtually or in-house, but we need to get candidates in front of people asking the right type of questions.
Right.
The questioning is key. A lot of times we ask kind of these surface level questions, and we don't get to the meat of, do you really support the Black agenda? Are you really about criminal justice reform? And how are you going to go about doing that work? Versus just, why should I vote for you? Well, they got that canned speech already, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're rich. So we need to ask the type of questions. And then also, the last part of the education is understanding the issues that are on the ballot. So there are going to be issues that are going to come up. Some of it is probably going to, with everything that's happening with the Black Lives Matter movement, you're probably going to see some type of reform issues on the ballot. Who knows?
Right.
Understand, educate ourselves on what those are, and educate others about what those issues are. The third area of focus was growing our own. This is long term. We talked about the importance of identifying people who look like us, who also not only look like us, but also will represent us and champion for our issues.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't be satisfied with the status quo. But that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of development and grooming. So identifying those who could possibly run for political office. Start canvassing what areas actually are in need. So maybe the Oakland County School Board, they need some folks on there that look like us, right? And are going to champion for our issues. We need to develop those candidates to run for that particular office. Okay, we're not asking necessarily, are you going to run for mayor or governor?
Right.
But we're talking about school boards and townships and central committees, all of those things that we need to have a voice on that are making decisions about our lives. We need to have people in there that represent us, and we need to start to identify, develop, and grow our own candidates.
Yeah.
We also talked about growing our own college early career. Start looking at those who are young adults who are eager. With the Black Lives Movement, there's a lot of momentum here that we can start to wrap ourselves around these young people, secure internships with them so they can start to learn and make those connections that are going to be necessary so that they can in the future run for office.
Right.
And then we also talked about developing a profile that has characteristics of a successful community, not what's necessarily what someone should look like, but what makes you a successful candidate. And we also talked about number 4 of our focus is vetting. We've got to do a better job of vetting these candidates. It can't be just enough that you show up and say hi. That you look nice in a suit or you can give a good speech. We have got to start vetting these candidates because they should not assume that they have our support.
Right.
They should be earning our support. And if they are not walking the walk, we should not give them our support. And we should not be so focused on, well, they're an incumbent. We've always supported them. Well, if they're not doing anything for us, why are we continuing to support them?
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to start really vetting our candidates. And again, hosting virtual forums and town halls, leverage our partnerships to assist with this work. And we can't forget about the surrounding counties.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, we spend a lot of time talking about just Columbus and Franklin County, but you got Delaware, you got Licking, you got Fairfield, all the surrounding counties that those offices are just as important. And the last area of focus that we talked about was accountability. We have to start checking the elected officials' voting record. What have they done? What legislation have they brought forth? Are they voting for issues that impact the Black community? Another way, and I think James talked about this yesterday, he was talking about the importance of attending meetings. He was saying how that was something he didn't do. I'm going to tell you, Clintonville, if they show up to a school board meeting, they get whatever they want. I'm going on record. They get whatever they want. And the reason why is because they're extremely vocal, they're organized, they do email, letter writing campaigns, postcard campaigns to school board members. They show up to the meeting and they show up in mass. And they let their voices be known. And they also tell them, we got you in the seat and we can elect you out of the seat. And as a result of that, they want to continue to get that vote. The school board pretty much Clintonville gets whatever they want. And that's why the schools are successful. That's why the schools have so much resources, great programming, because they have people that are advocating for them and are showing up. And we need to show up to city council. We need to show up to the commissioner meetings. We need to show up to township meetings. We need to show up to school board meetings. We need to show up and let our voices be known. We also need to know that if elected officials want to attend our church, it can't be just you come sit and wave and as somebody said, kiss and babies and go on. We want to invite them to stay after church, to meet with our members, to talk about the issues and where they stand. And if they're not willing to spend some time after church with our members, is it really somebody we want to support? We need to think about that.
Mhm.
And then the other thing, as far as accountability, what have they done beyond the Black Lives Matter protest? You showed up, took a knee, you waved your hand, took some pictures, but beyond that, what are you doing with regards to the work that needs to take place? And so those are the 5 actionable items that we talked about, the 5 focus areas with the actionable items. And I'll let Merv take over to talk about immediate action in our timeline.
Thanks, Tracy. From an immediate standpoint, what we can do is check our voter registration now. And many of you know I used to live in Chicago, and the mantra of Chicago voting is vote early and vote often. We'll modify that and say check our voter registration early. You know, with all of the shenanigans that tend to take place sometimes with purging of the voter rolls, we need to make sure that our names are securely located on the voter registration log, and we know where to go to vote. Support the Blackout Tuesdays movement. Every Tuesday, we want to encourage people to suspend their purchasing, and if they must shop, to support Black-owned businesses, you know, to flex our economic power. And support Buy Black Columbus, you know, in a related fashion here in Central Ohio. There are numerous Black-owned businesses here in Central Ohio that many of us don't know about.
Mhm.
I just learned of a Black-owned mechanic shop last night.
Mm.
So I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we share that information, because, you know, money is power. And to the extent that we're able to empower our Black businesses, that helps with their political clout, because they got money to exercise some political clout.
Right.
Timeline. So as I mentioned earlier, again, encouraging people to check their voter registration, continuing to do so. Now through August, we want to develop the educational videos and social media campaign, and identify and solicit the support of partners in faith-based, civic, and social organizations. We believe this is critical because, as I think I mentioned at the top, you know, a lot of times with these efforts, there's a lot of passion and energy up front, but you fizzle out because you try to boil the ocean. We try to do too much and do it on our own. There are a lot of different groups that are doing many of these same kinds of things, and I think that the power rests in us being able to collaborate effectively with some of those other groups and organizations.
Right.
In September, voter registration drives begin, and begin the drive to have folks request absentee ballots. September and October, you know, continue our education campaign, and or kick it off after we develop our materials. Host the candidate forums and town halls, and encourage early voting. Begin to arrange transportation to the polls, figure out who needs it, and work out the logistics to arrange transportation. And in November, specifically November 3rd, we're going to vote. And hopefully, well, I'll just do that to myself. We're going to vote.
Enough said.
I know what you mean.
I'm praying for 46.
And Salon,
Sounds like a good number.
When we were talking about economic power and why it's important for us to participate in the Blackout Tuesdays and to shop Black-owned businesses, as you noticed with the Montgomery bus boycott, and that was over a year long. The reason why the laws changed and banned segregation on buses had nothing to do with people's change of heart.
Right.
Had nothing to do with people feeling, oh, it's just the right thing to do. Had everything to do with the economic situation that was happening. So the buses were basically, the economy was changed. And so as a result, there was pressure to say, hey, you know, we've lost money.
Right.
We've got to make some changes. And it was an economic decision more so than a heart or moral decision. And so money really moves legislation in the United States. And that is why the 1% is making all of the decisions. That is why they are making decisions at, tax laws. Everything is based on that 1%, because money talks. And so we need to make sure that our dollars are talking.
Amen to that.
Yes, so important.
You all covered a lot of ground there.
Yes.
Pretty comprehensive.
Wow, it was good. Yeah.
So I don't even really have any questions because it was just laid out like that. But the teacher, yes, definitely. But there are a couple parts that I'm very excited about. In addition to, getting people out to vote, registering and all that. I really like the idea of growing our own step, because so many times we're looking outside, for who is the candidate who can change this city council or who can, affect my township. But it may be someone in your neighborhood, in your church, maybe somebody in the mirror. So giving people those tools to kind of to work that out, to become groomed and kind of walk in that direction is very exciting. And also I love the accountability part, because anybody who's been to a church around November knows or October, September, you're going to see the parade of the politicians, and God bless them. But I mean, I'm with you. If they can't sit down and talk after, then that may be that's a sign, a good indication of their priorities. So I mean, I think this is some really good stuff and stuff that we can implement, and other communities around us can as well.
Well, I don't know if Dana is still on. Is Dana still? Is he off?
He's still with
Dana
us.
Burke.
And yes,
okay.
He's getting his,
because just about everything that Merv said, Dana does. He's the head of our social justice, social action committee, and all of those things are things that they do on a regular basis. So I'm sure he's been listening, but I also am sure that those are things that he and his committee are planning on doing anyway. Is that right, Dana?
There were some great ideas. Can you hear me?
Yes.
There were some great ideas this group brought forth and expanded upon things that we really should be doing. And kudos out to Merv and Tracy. And with the "You Don't Vote, You Don't Count" campaign that we started at the beginning of the year, that just got off and got cut off by the virus.
Right.
But everything that they said should be done, and I'm glad that they brought it to light.
Yes, and I believe, Merv, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce the point about growing our own. I shared with our subcommittee that many years ago, I worked with a small group of folks trying to identify successful Black candidate to join the Olentangy local school board. And, those efforts, kind of snowballed. And now there's a Black woman who is actually on the board through her term expires December 2023. And a lot of that stemmed from the efforts that myself and many other people put forward, probably 8-10 years ago, to try and identify a successful candidate to join the board, somebody who looked like us, who's going to represent us, but also somebody who is electable. So I want to make sure that we add that component into what we talk about. I think that will result from some of the things that we brought forward, but making sure that as we're identifying folks, we're identifying people that are electable within whatever realm they choose to operate.
Yeah.
Right.
This was awesome, guys. I tell you, you have some brilliant people at Faith Ministries who know the ropes and will get it done. And I am so excited. Thank you, Tracy. You guys were talking about I think the last thing you said, Tracy, was something about Blackout Tuesday. And I got an email today from somebody in Baltimore who was also talking about having a blackout and only buying from Black businesses, Black-owned businesses who openly support our movement. And they said that the economy cannot move if we don't support other businesses who don't support us. And so that was real interesting that you touched upon that too. Yeah, that, and I just got this today, and that was really, that's something we don't really, just like the Montgomery boycott, that was awesome. And the economy of lots of other people went down. And, if you are trying to do something for Black lives, when you start talking about the money, that's the whole thing. So I am really excited that you all touched upon that. And another thing I wanted to ask about voting. You know how we always get these forms that have, if you're a Democrat, you vote this group. If you are a Republican, you vote this group. So for many years, I've just, whoever they say vote for, that's who I vote for. But that might not be the best thing. Is that what you're saying? That might not be the best thing to do. Okay. And I'm just remembering how good you sing, girl.
But anyway, answer your question. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. A lot of times, because we don't know the issues or we don't know the candidates, we are relying on somebody else to tell us. So what we do is we show up to the polling station, and the Democratic Party will hand us their ballot, right? And they'll say, "Hey, vote down the ballot, vote for these people." And because we have not spent time getting to know who the candidates are and not understanding what these positions do, we just say, "Okay, I don't know what a county engineer does, so I'm gonna just check that name." And I don't understand what the commissioner does, but they the boys and vote the boys. And we have not really vetted or checked the record to see if they're really doing anything for us. So I want us to become more educated voters and not vote necessarily about party, because it's really not about party. It is about your profession. It is about it's about policy, and it is about the economy. So if you are just voting party, that's why we have Trump, because people voted simply party and not really thinking about how it impacts the personal way because they're not understanding the issue. So we need to become educated voters, not just voters, but educated voters.
Right, and I don't know if it was this group or the home and family group, but one of the groups was talking about that same thing. How you generally just vote down party lines. And perhaps, I know Faith Ministries as a church could not, but perhaps there would be some nonpartisan nonprofit comprised of many faith ministry members who could do some of that research and come up with a ballot for people who are concerned about these issues that we're talking about. It may not be Democratic or Republican, but it could ensure that everyone on that list supports these issues.
It's a hard thing.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yes.
All right.
Man, well, you guys have done a great job. And I realized Regina Wilson was a part of this team as well. So we want to thank her and Mervyn Tracy. Oh, yes. And Lloyd, yes. Thank you guys so much.
So it's a wonderful team. And the sun is shining on
you can see it.
Yes,
the glory of the Lord coming through the window.
I think it's saying we're on the right track.
It's only on this side. It's not on my side. It's on one side.
That's funny.
That's
problem.
Crazy.
That is funny. I see where Dana Burke, he mentioned that the cutoff for general election is October 4th.
For voter registration.
Yes. I just want to make sure I mention that.
Yeah, so whether we're in person. Yes, go ahead, please.
A great presentation. The fact that we talk about absentees, that's been kind of a sore sore spot in our elections because people don't understand that absentees do not get counted until after, and many times after the election. And it has to be a certain percentage. So your vote may not get counted if it's not needed, or they're not sure if you're going to be a participant. And then the other thing behind that also is it contributes to being purged from the system.
I just want to clarify that. It's actually, there's two things. There's the absentee ballot and there's provisional.
I'm sorry, provisional, I'm sorry.
Yeah, absentee ballots actually get counted. They actually
I'm
get
sorry.
counted. Absentee ballots get counted first. And they don't necessarily have the right thing, or they're at the wrong polling station, and they ask you, do you want to submit a provisional ballot? They'll let you vote, but that vote is set aside and only counted if needed.
No, you're correct. You're correct. I was thinking, but it's provisionals that may not get counted and it can contribute to your being purged.
This is good.
Tracy, as you made that distinction, I just thought about.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, somebody just called me. Sorry. I just thought about something that we may want to add as part of the voter education component in terms of voter rights. So, knowing the difference between the types of ballots, but also knowing your rights as a voter and what people, because I fully anticipate voter intimidation and some of that kind of stuff to be a really big issue this time. So we need to, as part of our education, make sure that our voting constituency understands exactly what their rights are as voters and, not fall prey to any foolishness.
Right. And I can testify to that too, because one time during a local, it must have been a primary election or something, it wasn't presidential, my information hadn't changed, but for some reason, they said that I needed to fill out a provisional ballot. I had the same address, I had the same personal information, but I wasn't equipped with information to debate or to combat to counter that. Argue, yeah. So that would be helpful, definitely.
Education, yes.
Yes. All right. Well, we're gonna make this happen.
All right. This is some great stuff.
Thank you, guys. That's awesome.
All right. Are there any final thoughts? I don't think there's anything online.
Yes.
I don't think.
We still have our guests with us in the Zoom room.
Yes,
but thank you all for being a part. Yes, if you have any final thoughts, feel free to unmute and speak now or forever hold your peace. At least for now. Until next time.
Next time.
Yes.
Well, this has been a very cool process over the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
Just been able to pop in on some of the groups and just to hear the discussion. And we want to thank everyone, all of the committee members that were behind the scenes and those who were able to make the Zoom calls and the group leaders who were able to speak on behalf of those groups. We want to thank you for just putting your thoughts and your energy and heads together and giving the community information, this much needed information.
And even for those who are watching,
Yes.
we know that we've been on a lot these past couple of days. And for those of you who have been sticking with us and soaking in all this information, we appreciate you and want to let you know that this is not a spectator sport.
Right.
As we continue to grow, somebody mentioned the word snowball earlier. I don't know if it was Tracy or Merv, but that's what we are anticipating this will be. We're starting small but mighty, but this small group of people have developed a very comprehensive and effective plan of actions that we can take. So now the next step is for us to bring others along, to document this information, to implement it, and to start moving in this direction. So we can be ready when November hits. But even beyond that, we have some long-term goals that these steps can actually lend toward the success of those goals that we have.
Exactly. And we want to say also a special thank you to those who are watching from out of town that are not local right here in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you for just tuning in and for watching, because a lot of these things, it goes across the board. It,
Right.
you know, it goes across the country. And so we really appreciate that. So continue to share this information with family and friends wherever you are so they can get informed as well.
Yes. Doctors wise, any thoughts for us?
Well, I do want to thank again all of our teams and task forces for meeting. And there were many people who wanted to be a part of the task forces, but by the time that they filled out their connect form, the groups had already met or whatever. So now that they have reported, the next step is to gather up all those people who are interested in. If there are others to do that, we need to turn these task forces into people who are contemplating and reflecting, to people who are helping to lead the action. What I think would be a good next step, we don't have to do this online, broadcast it online, but a good next step would be to have some kind of meeting where all of the task forces met together and begin to see the synergistic way that we could do some of these things, because a lot of them have overlapped. So at some point we need to have a space, a time when we can all meet together and then put together a game plan, not just a bullet point, but a game plan. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? Similar to what Merv was talking about, a game plan, a timeline, checklist, all of these kinds of things. But I'm very encouraged about not only the ideas, but about the amount of effort that has been put in this, and that all these things are doable. We have people in our congregation who have the connections, who have the wherewithal, who have the knowledge to be able to help make this happen. And sort of like Dana was saying, you don't have to be a quote unquote elected official. You can be a regular person, and regular people can make these kinds of changes. So I appreciate that. And I see we're just going to have to do more of this to keep this going. One last point. I was checking the views yesterday of last night's broadcast, and I noticed that there were half as many people who watched to do something as watched to say something. And if we're going to have a snowball effect, it can't be a snowball in the summertime. It's got to be a snowball in the Antarctic so it can stay alive. And this is what typically happens. Everybody's got something to say, but now when it comes time to do something, half of the people are there. So now I don't want us to move from you say something to say about what we're going to do and then cut that in half with the people who are actually going to do it. So I hope this is a clarion call to challenge people, not just to say how you feel, what you think. Let's roll up our shoulders, get this done, and we'll be able to, along with this new generation, be able to celebrate some victories.
Well, let me just say that I am so thankful that I am surrounded by lots of very brilliant and very smart people, all of you guys out there, all the committees. You know, I believe that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Is that right?
That's right.
I believe if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, a lot of people always say, now, why don't you say more? But I just make sure that y'all do the right thing and that y'all say, y'all have already said everything. So I'm just so thankful to be surrounded by all of you and all of our listeners who also send chats and all that. So I think you're doing a great job. I think we're all doing a great job. When I see something that's not as great as it could be, then I'll say something.
I'm sure you will.
It's been great, guys.
Awesome.
See something.
Well, I guess that's a good.
Good note to end.
Yes.
I think we ought to have a prayer. We ought to close with prayer, because we should have opened and closed with prayer in all of our sessions, because these efforts and these things we're talking about cannot be done by us alone. Obviously, if we were able to do it on our own, it would have been done. So I want to ask God to bless us, bless all the efforts that we have placed in, bless the people that we don't know who are working, bless people who are staying up at night, can't sleep, because they're trying to figure out how to work these issues out and ask God to give them the guidance to do it. So, God, we thank you. We love you. We praise you. We adore you. We exalt you because of your goodness and your mercy. This information is not new to you. It's not a revelation to you. You know all about it and us. But we ask God that as we commit these thoughts, these ideas to you, that you might send them back to us, revise them, review them, reveal to us what we must do to implement them. And when it takes place, we're not going to rob the glory from you. We're going to give you all the glory and the honor. In Jesus' name we pray, and for his sake, amen.
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 Amen. All right. Thank you all for joining us, for being with us, and we will continue this conversation. Keep your eyes open for the next installment. But until then, happy Juneteenth.
Yes.
And we'll see you all Sunday at church.
Sounds great. Keep doing something.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. Bye.